kittens are asleep, which means I can finally film without them interrupting me. Hello everybody, my name is Danny and welcome back to my channel. If you are watching this on the day that it is coming out, it is September 16th, which is 3 days before my 24th birthday. And because my birthday is so soon, I've been thinking a lot about what's to come. I feel like that's only natural, and this is just a really fun idea that I had. It is very much inspired by Ruby Red. She has her TBR game every month that's Tic Tac TBR, and there's always a spot on her board for her 30 books she wants to read by the time she turns 30 list. And I'm like, you know what? I should make a list like that. So I did. And that's what this video is. I'm gonna try not to talk so much about the books like in depth because there are 30 of them, and last week's video was super long and I don't want this one to be so insanely long too, so I'm gonna try and be brief on these. The first 7 are books that I own already physically, then there are 20 on this list that I don't yet own, and then there are 3 manga series right at the end of the list. So without further ado, let's just get into talking about them. So the first book on my list of 30 books that I want to read by the time I turn 30 is Beowulf. I have this edition, which is translated by E. Talbot Donaldson. I've read the first part of Beowulf, so if you didn't know, Beowulf is a very old piece of classic literature, and it's a very, classic tale of heroism and epic adventure, and there are 3 different monsters that Beowulf fights throughout the course of this. I have read the first section where he fights Grendel, which is just like this kind of swamp monstery thing, but I haven't read the rest of it, so I very much would like to, which is why it's first on this list. And of course, my cat came and yelled at me until I held her for a little bit because I can't film in peace. Regardless, we're going to move on with the second book on this list, which is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This bind-up has Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. I've already read Jane Eyre. Actually, I read it in college in the same class where I read Beowulf. I've never read Wuthering Heights. I feel like I'm really going to like it, so that's why I want to get to it. Book number 3 is Walden by Henry David Thoreau. Originally, I had this whole plan that I was going to read this alongside a biography of Henry David Thoreau and then go on my own little, naturey Walden-inspired adventure. That didn't end up happening. I ended up unhauling the biography about him. Maybe not. It might have been the unhaul previous to the one that I just did last week. I don't remember. It's been gone for a little while. But I don't like nonfiction that much, so I knew I wasn't going to want to read that. But now that that's gone, I feel much more inclined to pick this up. Just not yet. I definitely want to save this for spring, because it definitely feels like a springtime book to me. Next up, we have The Taming of the Shrew by William Shakespeare. This is the only one of Shakespeare's plays that I own and have not read, aside from some of the histories. I don't like the histories very much, but I do still want to collect them, so we'll see if I read them or not. This is the only Shakespeare that is actually going on my list of 30 books that I want to read by the time I turn 30. Next up, we have Imaginations by William Carlos Williams. I am a very big fan of William Carlos Williams' poetry and writing in general, and I've owned this book for a very long time, and I don't know why I haven't read it, so hopefully I get to it somewhat soon. Up next on the list, we have Inferno by Dan Brown. Now, I'm not super interested in this, actually, which is weird that it made it on the list, but, I don't know, I feel like contemporary mystery thrillers just aren't really my vibe. Very appropriate that there's sirens currently going on in the background. I hope that you can't hear them, but I can. But, I bought this in Florence when I was there, senior year of high school, so 2016. It's been a long time. And if you didn't know, it takes place in Florence, which is why I bought it in Florence. I wanted to buy a copy in Italian, but they didn't have it, so I just bought it in English. And this is inspired by, almost dropped it, Dante's Inferno, which, if you didn't know, I'm a very big fan of, so that's why I'm, kind of interested in this, but not super. And the seventh and final book on this list that I actually physically own right now is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Do I need to talk about this? No, it is a fantasy classic mega hit, and I just need to read it. Sticking with fantasy classics, the next book on this list that I want to read by the time I turn 30 is The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. I love Tolkien's works. I loved Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and I've read some of the other supplemental writings. I just haven't read The Silmarillion, and I want to, which is why it's on this list. Then we have The Dark Hills Divide by Patrick Carman. This is the first book in a very spooky children's series. My one friend Marissa loves these books, and I have read Patrick Carman before. I read like some YA by him, and I really liked it. But like the vibes on this book and the series as a whole, I'm so here for them, and I really want to get my hands on this book. Next up, we have two books by Neil Gaiman. They are Anansi Boys and Norse Mythology. They are the only two books in Neil Gaiman's like standard canon that I have not read, and as a big fan of Neil Gaiman, I feel like I need to read them. I really want to read them because, like I just said, I'm a huge fan of Neil Gaiman and I want to read all of his works because why would I not want to read all of the works by one of my favorite authors? Book 12 on this list is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. If you've been watching my channel since the beginning, you might remember that this was on my list of 21 books that I wanted to read in 2021, and I never got to it because I don't own it, and I still don't own it, so maybe I'll get my hands on it soon. Then we have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, which is just a classic. I love Sylvia Plath, and somehow I've never read The Bell Jar. I literally studied literature in college for 4 years, and none of my classes ever had me read The Bell Jar, which I think is a crime. I feel like everyone should read it, and I'm ashamed that I haven't yet. Then we have House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski, and there's so much mystery surrounding this book. I've heard such strange things about it, but I've only heard like great things in terms of reviews, and I've just heard that the vibes are impeccable, and as we know, if the vibes are great, I am here for it. I can forgive some shortcomings of a book if the vibes are great. So I just have been intrigued by this book for so many years that I really want to get to it. Next, we have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the first series in the Realm of the Elderlings, which is, I think, 16 books across 4 different series that are like fantasy classics at this point. And I've heard so much about this book and the Realm of the Elderlings in general over the past, I want to say like 2 or 3 years. I feel like everyone and their mother on BookTube has been reading these books, and I want to get on that train. Okay, we are halfway through. This isn't going as poorly as I expected it because we know I love to ramble. Number 16 on this list is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is a weird novella, the first book in her Wayward Children series. I have read Seanan McGuire before. I read, what is it called? Into the Drowning Deep, which is under her pen name Mira Grant, and I loved the writing style. And I just want to get my hands on these because I feel like this is another series that BookTube just absolutely adores. Number 17 on the list is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, and I think it is a shame that I have never read anything by Octavia E. Butler. She is like so prolific, and I've been wanting to read her books for so long, and Kindred is definitely the one that I want to get my hands on first. After that, we have Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko, I think is how it's pronounced. This is a book originally written in Russian, and then it was translated into English semi-recently, and it's the first book in a series, and none of the rest of them are translated, which is why I'm a little bit wary about reading this, but this is another one of those books where I've heard it's got great vibes that I think I would enjoy. I first heard about this on the channel Cozy Rosie Reads, but since then I've heard about it from so many other people, and I just want to get my hands on it. Then we have 2 chunky fantasy books, and they are The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang and The Prior of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I don't think I need to talk about these. These are BookTube darlings. I feel like every fantasy lover absolutely adores these books, and I know that I will too. They're just very thick and intimidating, but I do want to get to them. Alright, 20 down, we are in the home stretch here. Number 21 on this list is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. This is the first book in a sci-fi trilogy that has just been sitting in the back of my mind for years, ever since I came across it at a bookstore, and I read the little summary on the back, and it sounded so good, and for some reason I've just never bought it, and I want to read it so bad. After that on my list is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, and I have read a lot of Ocean Vuong's poetry, and I think they are all fantastic. I've loved every single poem that I have read by them, and then this is like a book, but it's got like poetic elements I've heard, and like the cover is just so gorgeous. I need to get my hands on this, just like every other book on this list, otherwise they wouldn't be on this list, so I'm kind of just rambling now. After that on the list is Versed by Ray Armantrout, which Ray Armantrout is another poet that I have read and loved, and Versed is just the collection of poetry that has been recommended to me the most. I did actually have a professor in college tell me that my poetry reminded him of Ray Armantrout, like stylistically, which was like a huge compliment, but I don't own any of Ray Armantrout's collections physically, so I need to fix that and read all of them. So that's why Versed is on this list, because I figured I'd only put one. Then we have another poetry collection, which is Scary No Scary by Zachary Schomburg, I believe is how it's pronounced. And I actually had a professor in college who was friends with Zachary Schomburg, and we talked about his poetry a lot in that class, and I just fell in love with it. And it's very hard to get a copy of this. You can't like just order it from Amazon. You have to get it through like third-party sellers and everything. And so I am just all the more intrigued by that because of the like memories that I hold talking about this book and these poems in class. I just want my hands on it immediately. The next three are all books that I want to read because I, a while back, was reading a list of like queer lit every queer person should read, and I'm a queer person. I love reading queer lit, and these three jumped out the most to me, and they all sound so fantastic for very different reasons. The first one is Under the Udala Trees by Chanela Okparanta. I am so bad with names, and I'm very sorry if I've mispronounced that. I am doing my best. Then we have Our Wives Under the Sea by Julie Armfield, and finally we have Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg. They all sound so good, and I feel like reading those will help me connect with my queer identity more, which is always something I'm here for. It's very hard to be a queer person out in the world. Definitely things have changed for the better over the course of history, but like it's still kind of hard, and I wanna read more queer lit and celebrate being queer. And the last three items on my list of 30 books I want to read by the time I turn 30 are manga. They are Assassination Classroom by Yusei Matsui, Claymore by Norihiro Yagi, and Monster by Naoki Urasawa. These are series that are always on people's list of like 10 manga you absolutely have to read, or the best 15 manga of all time. Like these three always show up. They're all finished manga, which is definitely why I consider these to be more important to put on this list than some other series, because while there are other series that I might want to read a little bit more that are also considered like classic manga, I did want to prioritize finished series because I'm in the middle of so many ongoing series. It's kind of insane, and I need to like pump the brakes a little bit. But these three are just so intriguing and compelling, and I want to read them so bad. And so those are the 30 books that I want to read by the time I turn 30. And like I said, I'm turning 24 very soon, and so I still have 6 years until I turn 30, and I feel like that's a good amount of time to get started on this, because that's 5 books from here a year, and that's totally doable. I think I can get that done very easily. Maybe I will finish these super quickly and be able to make a second version of this list. Probably not, but we can hope. Yeah, that's all I have to say for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments if you have a list like this of any sort. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and that way I will see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys!